Have you ever felt hurt or angry when someone brushes off your problems or your struggles as something which is not important? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about what we can do when someone belittles us or belittles our struggles. Hi, I'm Shikah. I used to work as a counsellor and now I create done for you coaching materials, coaching workbooks and coaching workshops for life coaches and also for personal development influencers. All right, so let's get back to our topic. And what inspired me to talk about today's topic was because I once saw a very famous multi-millionaire singer posting a post on Instagram, and he basically wanted more credit or wanted more acknowledgement or credit for something which he has done, for his work, for some music that he has written. And then it was quite surprising when I saw the comments and people were attacking him in the comments, saying something like, there are people dying out there, there are more important problems in the world and you're worried about your $1 million paycheck. You know, people were making really critical and nasty comments like that in his post. And I felt that it's a little bit strange because I feel that if someone puts a lot of work or puts a lot of effort in his or her work, he or she deserves to be compensated fairly. So I believe that what he wanted was fair, but people were very angry about it and people were comparing his situation with maybe their own situation and criticizing him for being concerned for something which they think is quote unquote minor. And you don't have, usually, I notice that usually people who are in a privileged position are victims of this. And I guess part of the reason is because there is envy in us or envy in those people who are very critical. And some of them have this belief that if someone is very wealthy and has 5 houses and 3 cars and whatnot, they don't have the right to complain about anything at all. You know, these people have no right to complain about anything at all. They have to be grateful for everything that they have, and they should not be expressing displeasure of any sort at all. And I feel that this is a bit unfair because people who belong in a different socio-economic level, I assume that if you're watching this, I'm just going to assume that you are of someone of middle class. People who are of a certain socio-economic level may have different pressures and different challenges that we may not know or we may not see unless we are in their shoes. So that's what I feel. And you don't even have to be a celebrity or some kind of super privileged person to be a victim of this. If you have actually posted a small daily struggle of yours on Instagram stories, I can bet that there are people out there who do judge you a little bit. I do hope that we are all surrounded by really healthy social circles, but it's very hard to control what other people think. So that's why some of us are more careful when we want to post certain things on social media because we don't want to be judged. And if people have belittled your struggles before, I would like to take a very different route and tell you that all your struggles are actually valid. This is what you can do. So if you are the victim of this, if you have been belittled for your struggles before, this is what you can do. Number one, you can be aware that your circumstances are going to be different from other people's circumstances. And there are people who are living in a different demographic from you, in a different country or different continent from you, and they will have different struggles from you. I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you are living in a first world country. So if you are living in a first world country, you're going to have first world problems. All right. Your struggles are going to be different from people living in another part of the world. And as an example of this, maybe you know someone who is struggling between 2 job offers. She has, job offer number 1 and job number 2, and she was worried and fretting about which job to take. And she has possibly a jealous friend or jealous acquaintance who chides her and tells her that you are worried about which job to take. There are people out there who are jobless and homeless. This is a very small problem. And I believe that this is a very unfair reaction because as I mentioned, we are living in a different situation and there is no need to compare and there is no need to feel guilty about your struggles. There's no need to compare because it's irrelevant, and other people in other parts of the world have their own issues and we have our own issues. We have issues such as possibly stress, diseases, mental health issues and all that. And these issues affect us as human beings as well, even though we are not having survival issues like people in other parts of the world, we have issues which affect us as human beings. So there is no need to compare yourself with other people who are less fortunate. We all have our own struggles. This is what we can remember if there are people who belittle our struggles. The next thing you can do is to admit that we all have our own insecurities. All of us have our own insecurities. And this will cause us to worry about relatively small, unimportant things. I remember seeing this Instagram post from an influencer, a very wealthy influencer, and she was torn between buying Hermes bag number 1 and Hermes bag number 2. And of course, people were slamming her left, right, and center, saying something like, there are people out there who are struggling and you are worried about which handbag to buy. People were judging her in that way. But what we are not aware of is that people of her status may be facing certain pressures that we are not aware of. Maybe societal pressure, maybe she has people to impress, maybe she has her own insecurities about her own standing in that circle. And that is why she was fretting over something which we think is a very small decision. So she has her own struggles as well. And sometimes you may be tempted to think that, if I were that rich, I will not be worried about which handbags or shoes to buy. I will not be worried about small things. But I would like to remind us to be a little bit more humble, because we will never know the struggles that these people are facing until we are there. And you'll never know if you reach that level of, if you belong into that socioeconomic status one day, you may also be fretting about the small things, the so-called small things that these people worry about. So we have to be a bit more humble and also a bit more compassionate as well. And another rich influencer I saw a few years ago, she's married into wealth. So she obviously does not have to work. She's very wealthy. And it was during the lockdown period, and she was fretting about she was ranting a little bit about how she has to homeschool her kids, and she finds it so stressful and tiring. And of course, people were slamming her and telling her things like, what about the women who are working full-time jobs and having to juggle between that and kids and chores at home? You have it easy. You don't have to work. People were commenting that on her. People were judging her. But from what I see, that wealthy influencer has her own insecurities. From what I see, she has deep insecurities, and she also has some mental health issues. So it's not fair for us to judge people that way, and it's just much better for us to be more compassionate, because they have their own challenges as well. And I feel that the most important thing we have to remember if someone belittles us or our struggles is that we have very different values. Your values are going to be different from the people who belittle you. So for example, let's say there is someone who is struggling between having a salad for lunch or having a fast food meal for lunch, and let's say she's really worried and fretting about this. There are people who are going to criticize her and say, this is such a first world problem, this is such a small problem. Other people are starving out there, and you're worried about whether to eat a salad or a burger for lunch. I mean, come on, there are people who are going to be very nasty like that. But I would say that this is a reflection of differences in values. So that person may be valuing a healthy lifestyle a lot. She values healthy lifestyle, healthy eating a lot. And the people who criticize her don't value healthy eating or a healthy lifestyle a lot. So they judge her values as being so-called insignificant. So just bear in mind that sometimes differences in values can cause people to belittle our struggles. And we don't have to be so worked up about it, because we all value different things. And if someone judges your values as inferior or insignificant, it tells a lot about their own character. All right. Another thing I want you to remember when someone belittles you or your struggles is that genetically we are all wired differently, and upbringing also plays a part. Some of us are genetically wired to be more anxious and to be overthinkers, especially if anxiety runs in your family. And upbringing plays a part, like I mentioned. If you have critical parents, or if you have controlling caretakers, or caretakers who have very bad tempers, caretakers who have very catastrophizing thinking patterns, you are going to be someone who is very hypersensitive and hyper aware of your surroundings. This means that little things bother you a lot more than the average person. So if you're someone who is very bothered by little things, this can be because that you have a childhood which actually builds that in you. You may have caretakers who are critical, like I mentioned, or caretakers whom you feel as though you're walking on eggshells all the time, and this will make you into someone who is who is hyper alert. What does not bother the average person or does not bother someone from a healthy family will bother you. So that's why I feel that it's not fair for some of us to judge other people for being quote-unquote fussy. There are people out there who are more particular and quote-unquote fussy about the food they eat or the clothes they wear and all that. And it could be also because, like I mentioned, they are bringing all their genetic wiring. Or some people who are very alert to noise. People who are brought up in a condition or in an environment where they had to be on hyper alert all the time. Maybe they had a parent who was abusive or had a bad temper. They tend to be very hypersensitive to noises and changes in moods and environment. Maybe you know someone, or maybe you yourself are someone who is hypersensitive. All right, and don't let other people tell you that get over it. It's a small thing. Don't be so sensitive about small things. Sometimes people are just not aware that you have a different upbringing from them, and that's why you worry about little things. And so that's all I've got to share with you today. It's good to remember these 4 things. If someone belittles you or belittles your struggles, remember that your circumstances are different from other people's circumstances. Admit that you have your own insecurities, which make you worry about relatively unimportant things to other people, relatively small things, and that's okay. We are all working through our insecurities. Number 3, remember that we have different values from other people, so we may worry about different things which other people don't worry about, and if they belittle you, well, that says a lot about them not respecting your values. Number 4, remember that we have different upbringing, different childhood experiences, different genetic wirings, and that will cause us to react differently and to worry about different things from people who come from relatively healthier backgrounds. All right, so that's all I have to share with you today. I want to affirm you that your struggles are valid, all your struggles are valid, and thank you for joining me today, and I hope this video has been helpful for you.